Nearly 20 years after the final film in the trilogy, some fans are still scratching their heads over various elements of the Matrix series. So now, we're taking a look at the most confusing scenes in the franchise and finally explaining these Matrix moments. The Matrix primarily takes place from Neo's point of view and in his world. He's just a random guy who happens to be a really good hacker. That all changes when he's contacted by Morpheus, pulled out of the Matrix, and told he's the one. Morpheus seems to believe Neo is his man with absolute certainty. But what the film never tells us is how he knows Neo is the one. The short answer is that it doesn't matter to the story, because we're meant to experience it from Neo's perspective as someone coming to terms with the news that he's a messiah. But if we really want to dig deeper, the film makes it clear through action that Morpheus, in addition to being a leader of the Resistance, is an expert hacker. The film also makes it clear that Neo has gained a reputation as someone who seems to question the nature of his reality. Neo has also heard of Morpheus before, and has expressed curiosity about him in the past. Therefore, it's likely that Morpheus had been observing Neo for some time before the events of the film, and that he came to the conclusion that Neo was the man he was looking for. Morpheus did the legwork. It's just legwork we don't get to see on the screen.
I can guide you, but you must do exactly as I say.
In The Matrix, Morpheus explains to Neo that the Matrix exists as a simulation to occupy the minds of humanity and make them think that they're living a normal life. In reality, the Matrix exists because the machines have enslaved all of humanity for the purposes of power. Humans are living batteries, kept alive in pods and vast farming complexes to supply energy to the machine civilization. This, of course, begs an important question. Why don't the machines try to find other sources of power? As Morpheus also explains in The Matrix, humans scorched the sky during their war with the machines, because at the time the machines were primarily dependent on solar power. Since the polluted skies of Earth make it impossible for the machines to feed on the sun, they use the humans as a new power source. But what about fossil fuels or hydroelectric power? Well, the Matrix takes place at some point in the future, so it's possible the machines simply used up the remaining fossil fuel. As for water and wind power, those could have been crippled by the permanent loss of the sun and the change to Earth's ecosystem. Even if they weren't though, who's to say the machines haven't tried those in the past or are still trying them now? The machine world is vast. They might use more than one power source. After freeing Neo from his pod, Morpheus takes him to meet the Oracle, a prophet with a thing for baking cookies and smoking cigarettes. The Oracle spends a little time alone with Neo before basically telling him that he's not the one. The thing is, Neo is the one. That's established firmly by the end of the film. The Oracle is supposed to know everything, so why does she steer Neo wrong? If you look at the scene again, Neo is actually the one who says the words,
"I'm not the one."
Sorry, kid. You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
Shaken by the news, Neo presses her for more details, and that's when the Oracle tells him about the importance of Morpheus to the Resistance movement. She also tells him how much Morpheus believes in him, to the point that she's sure one of them will die as a result. This inspires Neo to stay close to Morpheus and rise to the occasion of saving his life at the end of the film, putting him on the path of the One. So the Oracle always knew Neo was the one, but she judged him as someone who wasn't ready to hear that. He needed to have faith in himself first. By telling him what she did, the Oracle pointed Neo in the right direction. In the Matrix franchise, the human resistance movement is forced to live underground, with limited resources and weapons. However, one of these weapons is especially effective in the war against the machines. We're talking about a device that generates an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, that knocks out any electronic equipment in the vicinity. These devices are used to great effect as defensive weapons that allow humans to neutralize nearby machines as a last resort to live and fight another day. So why don't the humans start using them offensively? Well, for one, EMPs have drawbacks. They knock out the machines, but they also kill any electronic equipment the humans are using, including their hovercrafts and computers. This means no one can be jacked into the Matrix when an EMP is used, or they'll die in the process. For another, there are simply too many machines to make offensive use of EMPs practical. Their effect is only temporary, and even if every human hovercraft launched a full assault on the machine city, they'd barely reach the outskirts before having to activate every EMP they had at once to defeat the first wave of machine sentinels. Another wave would surely follow, and they'd be overrun. In the world of the Matrix, Zion is the last human city, an underground refuge where the resistance movement is headquartered and the human race continues to fight for survival. Every resistance mission is launched from there, and hundreds of thousands of people live in freedom while they work to wipe the machines out entirely. Meanwhile, the machines have clearly put various systems in place to counteract human resistance, from agents to sentinels, and their resources are vast. So why haven't the machines wiped out Zion? As the architect explains in The Matrix Reloaded, Zion is allowed to exist persist by the machines, because the concept of resistance centered around the prophecy of the One is a machine creation. It was generated to make humans resisting the Matrix feel like they have a choice. In the eyes of the machine, Zion is a necessary evil that must exist so the Matrix can persist and their key source of power can remain in place. In The Matrix Reloaded, Agent Smith shows an immense power to copy himself onto others within the Matrix, creating a sizable clone army. He then expands that ability to the real world when he possesses a Resistance member, Bane, via a phone line. Smith then exists in the real world through Bane's body, but how is that possible? Well, Smith is a computer program created by the machines as an enforcer within the Matrix, who's been freed via Neo's attempt to destroy him in the first film. So in the first movie, Smith is basically an antivirus program. However, in the last two movies, he essentially becomes a software virus himself, able to replicate and spread through contact. The humans living in the Matrix are grown by the machines and designed to receive software through the ports built into their flesh. Smith is basically using that same principle to transmit his own code into Bane's brain, possessing him. As for how he can survive in there without a connection, well, these humans have certain tech built into them. That's how the machines make the illusion of the Matrix persist, and how the Resistance does things like teach themselves martial arts via software. Smith is basically just hijacking that innate stuff for his own nefarious purposes. In The Matrix Reloaded, Neo meets the Architect, the program that designed the Matrix, and the two have a lengthy conversation about what's going to happen next. For many fans, both when the film came out and now, this scene sort of grinds the movie to a halt. After all, the Architect is a deliberately humorless, analytical being who speaks, well, like a computer program might speak.
Concurrently, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
So what's the Architect really trying to say? It's a little complicated, but it breaks down like this. The Resistance movement isn't an entirely human creation. The prophecy of the One was generated by the machines, and the Resistance is allowed to persist because of an anomaly in which a small percentage of the population rejects the Matrix as their true reality. By allowing a human Resistance movement, the Architect can course-correct this by creating the illusion of choice. The One is also a machine creation and contains a special code that reboots the Matrix each time he returns to the source, continuing the cycle of human subjugation. The Architect explains this to Neo and gives him a choice. He can go to the source and be given the opportunity to repopulate Zion and restart the cycle, or he can save Trinity and, by extension, kill the human race. Neo chooses Trinity, and his love for her introduces a new variable that the Architect did not foresee, leading to the next film. At the end of The Matrix Reloaded, Neo manifests a new power and neutralizes several machines with his mind, but he falls into a coma immediately afterwards. At the beginning of The Matrix Revolutions, Neo's body in the real world is still in a coma, but his Matrix form wakes up in a subway station where Ramachandra and his family are waiting. Ramachandra explains that the train station, which they can only leave on the trainman's train, is a kind of limbo. It's a waypoint for rogue programs being smuggled into the Matrix by the Merovingian to avoid deletion by the source. So how did Neo get there? The Oracle explains in the video game Enter the Matrix that when he lashed out at the machines, Neo unwittingly touched the source, but entered limbo rather than dying. That's not the most concrete explanation ever, but at least it explains why Neo's body and mind were separated. In The Matrix Reloaded, the Oracle explains to Neo that the Matrix is full of rogue programs who refuse to go back to the source for deletion when they were intended to. Instead, they live a somewhat hidden life, often pursuing various criminal enterprises or simply trying to survive because they like existing. These include the Merovingian, his twin enforcers, the Trainman, the Keymaker, and many others. At the end of The Matrix Revolutions, the Matrix is rebooted after Neo fulfills his end of the bargain with the machines and defeats Smith by sending him back to the source. So what does that reboot mean for all of those rogue programs? The short answer is actually not much. While Smith and all traces of him were seemingly deleted at the end of the film, we see the rogue program Sati still alive at the exact moment of the reboot. The Matrix Online later reveals that characters like the Merovingian are also still alive and doing their thing. In fact, the Merovingian remains one of the oldest programs in the Matrix, which suggests that he's survived multiple reboots. So rebooting doesn't necessarily mean cleaning up everything. Historically, it was usually about the machines trying to repeat the cycle of human subjugation. At the end of Revolutions, it signals a fresh start for humans more than it does the Matrix. In the Matrix Revolutions, Neo realizes that Agent Smith has become too powerful for the machines to defeat, and so he strikes a deal with the robotic overlords, offering to take care of Smith once and for all. The machines agree, and Neo uses Smith's obsession with him to launch a fight. He then allows Smith to try to copy him while he's directly connected to the source. This sends Smith back to the source where he's deleted, and the Matrix reboots while the machines agree to Neo's terms of peace with the human race. The downside of this, of course, is that Neo gives his life in the process, but the Oracle casts doubt on his permanent death, saying at the very end of the film that she thinks we might see him again. Obviously, we know now this is true because a fourth Matrix film starring Keanu Reeves is on the way. But why does the Oracle think this? How can Neo come back from the dead? Well, because he was pre-programmed to be the one. Neo is partially software, even more than the other humans born in pods. So theoretically, a program could be built from the remnants of his code that approximates his mind and personality. In fact, one of the early storylines in the Matrix Online video game centers on that idea. Parts of Neo are out there, even if they're fragmented. The trick is bringing those fragments together as something that actually retains the essence of Neo. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.